1 minute.
Mr. President, I take the opportunity of wishing the East European cities well in the coming of the very early skiing season, and snow and ice that's come there, what of course is indicative of the fact that, as independent science has now confirmed, that the globe is actually cooling and has been cooling since 2002, broadly flat since 1998. We're all talking about something here which isn't happening. I've heard time and time again members here talk of CO2 as a pollutant. A pollutant is a life-giving natural gas. It gives me the impression that some of our members haven't had the benefit of a formal education. Isn't this really just about the state being able to get its hand in ordinary people's trouser pocket to steal yet more tax from them? Isn't this all about political control? Isn't all this about politics and big business? The whole thing's a sham. This bogus hypothesis, this ridiculous nonsense that man-made CO2 is causing global warming. Enough, please, before we damage irrevocably the global economy.
Peter Harcher, writing in the Sydney Morning Herald at the weekend, asked when was the last time Kevin Rudd made a speech on the subject that he once called the great moral and economic challenge of our time, climate change. Harcher answered his own question 6 months ago. Harcher wrote, Rudd's promise to act on global warming was one of the central campaign pledges that carried him to the Prime Ministership in 2007. It's a mandate issue for him. He went on, yet he's not made any serious effort to argue his case for 6 months. He's not truly set out to lead public opinion on the issue for half a year. His last speech on the subject was on April the 16th, and Harcher went on to make the point that there's plenty about the climate change issue about which Australians know nothing. Well, we've been told nothing. No economic models, no information on the effect on industry, on unemployment, no documentation on what it will do to the national economy. Yet, as Peter Costello says, when he was introducing the GST, he couldn't walk through a radio or a television door without being asked what that tax would do to every single item that any interviewer could think of. Well, not only are there no such questions of the Prime Minister, he offers no information relevant to them and won't allow himself to be questioned about them. Well, it's even worse than that. I have read part of a speech recently made by Christopher Monckton, the 3rd Viscount Monckton of Brenchley, a 56-year-old British politician, a business consultant, a policy advisor, a writer, a columnist, and a peer, Lord Monckton, a former advisor to Margaret Thatcher. He too has attracted controversy for his public opposition to mainstream scientific consensus, or that's what it's called, on global warming. Lord Monckton gave this speech in St Paul, Minnesota, in America recently. His concluding remarks are alarming. We are weeks away, says Lord Monckton, from this Copenhagen conference in December, where he says a treaty will be signed. Speaking to the Americans, he said, your president will sign it, most of the third world countries will sign it, because they think they're going to get money out of it. Most of the left-wing regimes from the European Union will rubber stamp it. Virtually nobody won't sign it. As Lord Monckton then said, I have read the treaty, and what it says is this, that a world government is going to be created. He says the word government appears as the first of 3 purposes of the new entity. The second purpose is the transfer of wealth from the countries of the West to third world countries in satisfaction of what is called coyly climate debt, because we've been burning CO2 and they haven't, and we've been screwing up the climate and they haven't. Lord Monckton joins me on the line from London. Lord Monckton, good morning and thank you for your time.
Good morning and hello to Australia.
Thank you for talking to me. We have a Prime Minister here who's gone silent on all of this. As I just said, he's not made a speech on the subject since the 16th of April, yet before the last election we were told this was the great moral and economic challenge of our time. Are we being misled?
There are 2 reasons why Kevin Rudd is saying nothing about this. The first is that they're trying to conceal what is in the Copenhagen Treaty so that they hope they can get away with signing it before democratic countries who believe in government of the people, by the people and for the people find out that their democracies are about to be taken away forever. That's one reason why he's being quiet, because he and the rest of the political class internationally have decided they would quite like to have a government that isn't democratic running everything from the center of the world. And the way they're going to do it, you'll find that in the 200 very diffuse and rambling pages of this draft treaty, the words democracy, election, ballot, or vote do not occur even once. This is to be a communist dictatorship, not a democracy, this new world government. So that's one reason why he's being quiet about it. The other reason why he's being quiet about it is that his own scientists are telling him that the science behind global warming has now finally collapsed. And we now know by direct measurement, rather than by guessing with huge Xbox 360s used by the UN, we now know what the effect of CO2 on the climate is. And it causes only 1/6 of the warming that the UN had thought. And that's the end of the scare, because we're no longer guessing. We've now measured it. We thought we couldn't, but a very brilliant scientist called Professor Richard Lindzen of MIT found a way to measure it by using a satellite that was measuring outgoing radiation from the Earth's surface. As you know, the whole story is about the radiation being trapped down here by greenhouse gases and the radiation, therefore, staying down here and causing warming. What is actually happening, and this has been very carefully measured now in a meticulous paper by Lindzen and his colleague Toy, just published, is that the radiation is getting out to space just as much as it always did, or very nearly so, and therefore it isn't staying down here to cause warming. That's why this paper is so fundamental, and that's why it brings the debate to an end. Of course, it follows several previous papers that came to a similar conclusion. I published one a year ago using theoretical methods, saying that there would be less than 1 Celsius degree of warming for a doubling of CO2 concentration expected this century. And the two editors of the journal in which I published this were both sacked for printing it. But now, that broke the logjam. There's been a spate of papers out ever since, all coming to the same conclusion by a variety of different methods. And the final one, the capstone, is Lindzen's paper, saying we no longer have a problem with the climate. The scare is over.
So basically this is Halley's Comet stuff. The comet was going to clean us out, and in the end you needed high-powered binoculars to see it, or Y2K. Hey, we're back in that kind of syndrome, aren't we? The Gulf War, we're told. Hey, we were going to run out of oil.
Bird flu, it's all these things, peak oil, they're all scares got up, often by scientists who know that the fastest way to get money out of the state, which now funds 99% of all science, you know, research science is basically a monopsony. There's only one customer, and that's the poor old taxpayer, whether he likes it or not. And the quickest way for scientists really to get rich and to get attention, which they don't get otherwise, is to invent a scare. And they're always doing it. And because politicians are fantastically scientifically illiterate, the scientists get away with this time and again. And this global warming thing has proved to be a really big one, except that there are just a few honest scientists who will not play that game. A few honest scientists have been quietly speaking out, and more, in fact, speaking out, and saying we're not going to have this nonsense anymore. Just in Japan, not that far from you, recently, a group of scientists in the National Academy said that believing in global warming in the way that the UN does is equivalent to believing in astrology.
Amazing, isn't it? Just after that, Nicholas Stern, who's not a scientist, published that report, which really was accepted as holy gospel, I told my listeners here that one of the world's leading environmental economists, Dr. Richard Toll of Hamburg and Carnegie Mellon universities, told the BBC, and I quote him, "If a student of mine were to hand in this report, the Stern report, as a master's thesis, perhaps if I were in a good mood I'd give him a D for diligence, more likely I'd give him an F for fail." Now, you're saying that there is a treaty here. Why haven't we been told about this, and why haven't we been told the detail of it?
Because they've kept it secret in the usual way that they do. You have to go to a very, very obscure UN website and hack your way through several layers of complication before you find a document that isn't even called the draft treaty. It's called a note by the Secretariat. And a very kind friend of mine found this by spending